Hi, everybody. Welcome to Draw Along with Dark Horse. I'm your host, Anthony Morrow, and I am joined with my esteemed, critically acclaimed panel of guest artists. We have Mike Deodato, the co-creator and illustrator of Berserker Unbound here at Dark Horse. We have Tyler Crook, the co-creator and illustrator of series such as Harrow County and Manor Black, and co-creator of Tales from Harrow County, which Naomi Franquiz is the artist illustrating Tales from Harrow County, Death Squire. And then, of course, we have Gabriel Bá, co-creator and illustrator for the Umbrella Academy. So we are here today, and our artists are going to be kind of doing a round robin, drawing each other's characters. So let's get started, and everybody can kind of say what they're doing and who they're drawing. So, Mike, you want to start with you?
Yeah, I'm drawing Colonel Weird from Black Hammer. And I hope I do not piss Jeff Lemire when I finish. But I will try to make it look better in the end. Yes.
I think it looks fantastic right now. Well, Tyler, let's jump over to you because you're currently working with Jeff drawing the miniseries for Colonel Weird, that Black Hammer spinoff. So
that's correct.
On this panel today, fair. The coronavirus kind of pushed everybody's publishing schedule back. So
yeah, it did.
Yeah. But who are you drawing today?
I am drawing Space Boy from Umbrella Academy. I have him a little bit roughed in right now.
Very cool. Naomi, who are you drawing today?
I get to draw Berserker from Jeff Lemire and Mike's series Berserker Unbound.
Very cool.
Wild dude.
And Gabriel, who are you drawing today?
I'm drawing Bernice and Priscilla from Harrow County.
Very fun.
Yeah.
Well, while you guys are working on that, I'm just going to throw this question out to all of you. How did you get into comics? What brought you in? What made you stay? Anybody can start if they have an answer off the top of their head.
Well, me, I started doing fanzine, independent work in Brazil, and 1978, nobody was alive. But I started doing comics for US in 1991 with Santa Claus for Malibu.
Okay.
And in 1994, I did Wonder Woman, and then the rest is ancient history.
You just recently, Mike, just within the last year, stopped being a Marvel exclusive artist to focus on creator-owned stuff.
Yeah, it was sometimes people may think it was something bold to do, or how dare he to do that, but actually, I'm in a good position. If I want to go to anywhere, people will say, "Oh, come here." So it was not as, but it was a necessity I had in me. I wanted to do something mine own, so I had to do it. I spent 24 years drawing the heroes from other people. I wanted to do my own, so. And I started working with Jeff Lemire, and I did Berserker for Dark Horse. So it was a good start, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. A great start. What about you, Gabriel? What brought you into comics?
I used to read a lot of superhero comics in the 80s. It was a great age to start reading comics everywhere in Brazil, especially. And then by the early 90s, I knew I wanted to do comics. I was, a teenager. I was in high school or getting into college. And then I saw all these Brazilians making their way into the American market. And Deodato is one of them. And I saw like an entryway, say, oh, so people are doing it. It's possible. So because in Brazil, our market was pretty dead in the 90s. And I also started like Deodato with fanzines. I used to do fanzines and sell to my friends in college or high school before that. And I don't know, it's such a long story. Deodato was great at like summing it up. His story, he has done so much more than that. But I don't know. I think in 1997, I was doing this medieval comic called Roland that a friend of mine has written, and he lived in California, and he told me, we have to go to San Diego because there's a big convention there, and we're gonna show our work to publishers, and everyone is gonna love it. So I went to San Diego for the first time in 1997. And I think that's when I really discovered all the possibilities that I could really do with comics. And I kept going every year just to show my work. Roland was self-published, so no one picked it up, obviously.
Sure.
And but I started meeting artists, and after that I met publishers, and one thing led to the other. Started doing short stories for anthologies, doing self-published comics and taking to San Diego. At a certain point, we got better opportunities. I got this 8-page story in the Dark Horse anthology Autobiographics. That was one of our biggest breaks. And then we got I got to work with Matt Fraction on Casanova, and after that Umbrella, and by that time 10 years had passed going to San Diego every year, and meeting artists and editors and writers, and so that's kind of how I got into the American market of comics. I was doing comics in Brazil at the same time, so
right.
I don't know, long story.
It's a good story though. Naomi, how about you? What brought you into comics?
Kind of a similar vein, in that I started introducing my work more online and using like hashtags through like Twitter and on Tumblr back in the day. And I got noticed by a couple editors who wanted to see me do trial pages for comics. And the first few didn't go through, and that I did some designs for my first series, Misfit City, which was just kind of introduced me to, I guess, the network. I don't know. But it was great. And then from there, I started applying to indie comics, like indie anthology series, like Power and Magic Press. And recently I just got my copies for Elements Earth and things like that.
Very cool. I didn't realize you were in that anthology. I love the Element anthologies. They're super well done.
Thank you.
Tyler, how about you? What brought you into comics?
It was sort of like one of those things that I always wanted to do, but was somehow very like strange and mysterious to me. I could never figure out if it was a thing that anybody actually did for a living. And then, so I ended up getting into the gaming industry and doing art for video games for about 12 years. And then it was one of those things where it was like every couple of years I would get super burnt out on gaming and work on a comic book portfolio and sort of take it to San Diego and very like timidly show it to a couple editors, and it would sort of never go anywhere. And then I would be like, well, making video games is all right. And I'd sort of forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just at one point I was like burnt out enough on comics and motivated enough to actually do some follow up on some of my comic book stuff. And I met James Lucas Jones at the old Stumptown Comics Festival. I was still in the basement of that Red Lion or wherever it was.
Yeah.
And he offered me my first book, and I've been doing it ever since.
Very cool. Well, let's switch back to Naomi. How did you jump on board Tales from Harrow County? How did that fall into place for you?
Well, through Tyler, actually. I've been reading the series when it was first, coming out, and it was still being produced before it had wrapped up. And then, with comics, it's hard to keep up and work on comics at the same time, other stories. But me and Tyler had been online mutuals, and we had met at conventions, so we were familiar with each other's work. And he messaged me saying, hey, we're looking for, another artist. Would you be interested? And I said, yes. Heck yes. Because I'm a huge fan of Tyler's watercolor work, and I really enjoy doing watercolor as well. And I've been doing all my comic work digitally until then. So I just really jumped at the opportunity to get to do a whole mini series in watercolor. It was wild.
I am so stoked that you did that. It turned out so good.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited that you asked me, that you invited me.
Did you find it, we hadn't ever just talked about this. Did you find it like challenging to work analog versus digital? Like,
yeah. There's definitely a mental switch. Yeah.
Doing a whole book in watercolor is crazy. You guys are crazy.
A little bit, it's fine.
Tyler did a whole, what was that, 36 issues of Harrow County in watercolor?
32 issues. Yeah.
Only 32, just 4 shy. That's fine.
Yeah, just 4 shy of 36, yeah.
I've got the library editions downstairs. They're like this thing.
I got them. I have them stacked all right here. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
They're beautiful books. Shout out to Dark Horse and to the editorial team for putting those library editions together, because they're gorgeous. But yeah, like Gabriel said, doing a whole book in watercolor that just seems insane. And I've seen Tyler now do some live streams doing those watercolors just like it's nothing, and it's just so impressive the way you're just able to lay down color, Tyler.
Well, thanks.
Yeah,
I learned absolutely. A lot. Those videos.
I thought Gabriel had done some full color watercolor books.
Yes, that's why. Actually, Fabio did the artwork, my brother, because we did this illustration book here in Brazil about a city. There was this line of books about Brazilian cities, and we showed that to Diana, our editor, and she loved it. And when she invited us to do How to Talk to Girls at Parties, the adaptation of the Neil Gaiman book, short story, she said, and you should do it like that illustration book that you did. And we said yes. So we did I think it's 60 pages I think it's 60 pages long watercolor comic. But we did it in that like old-fashioned inks on one paper and then watercolor on the other paper, because we're not, as good, as confident watercolorists. So we need our very straightforward black and white art in one paper, and then the watercolors on the other one. If we mess it up, we can just do it again.
Yeah.
So, and it was, just twice the work, and it was crazy. Twice the work, twice the time.
Sure.
everything.
Hard work pays off though. That book turned out beautiful. And I believe that story is collected in that Neil Gaiman library edition that just
it just came out on the first one. Yeah.
So
and Fabio is doing the watercolor covers for that collection, but he's doing it all in one paper. So it's not like black and white in one paper and watercolor in the other one, and then put it together. He's doing it all in one paper, but it's just the cover. It's different, making several pages of watercolor is just crazy. It's too much. It's too much.
But it's funny
because watercolor it's like chemistry. It's like magic. One thing goes wrong and then boom.
I actually
the
had that.
whole composition goes wrong.
I had a moment with that with the covers.
Yeah, that's the beauty. One color blends to the other, and then but we're just not as confident doing that as we are on black and white inking.
Yeah. Right.
So probably not going to do it again ever. That book was one of its kind.
I think I'm stuck now. I did a job a couple years ago where they called me up and wanted me to do like a 10-page thing. And I was like, well, do you want me to just do line art or do you want me to do the watercolor? And the editor was like, no, we want you to do the watercolor. That's what you do now.
No. You made your bed.
Yeah.
I don't mind though. I like it.
It's a beautiful bed for sure.
It's a beautiful bed.
I was going to say that on Tombstone.
Mike, how did you and Jeff come up with Berserker Unbound? How was that what you decided to be your first kind of creator-owned thing post Marvel?
For that, I wanted to tell about my experience painting a whole book. I did.
Oh yes, please.
Beast in the 90s. I did 6 issues, and I had to airbrush all of it.
Oh wow!
And I didn't know how to airbrush right, so I kind of learned while I was doing. So you can see the difference from issue 1 to issue 6. But it was great. I could do only 1 page and a half, 1 day and a half per page.
Wow!
It was great. Anyway, so I was doing Thanos with Jeff Lemire at Marvel, and I was loving it. We are enjoying each other. So he asked me to do, if I wanted to do a book with him. So I said yes. He asked me what I wanted to do. I said a barbarian. And that was my only contribution. The brainstorm stopped there.
Done.
And then I created a Dropbox account for us. And I just watched the pages coming over. And in 2.5 days, he completed 115 pages. And he actually, he tricked me because we were going to do 60 and then, let's do 80 and 90 and then, and, but it was fantastic to see. When we defined what character we wanted, I immediately did that cover of issue 2 that we were talking about before. So he could be excited about the project and he loved it. So that was it. And I'm looking forward to do the continuation as soon as he finds some time, because, the guy likes to do everything.
Oh yeah. He is probably by far the busiest guy working in comics right now with all the different series he's writing and all those film and television deals he's getting. He's a busy man. Well, how did each of you come onto your specific projects? I guess, Mike, we just heard your story, but then we heard yours. Tyler, how did we get you on Harrow County?
Harrow County came about because I was, at the time, I was working on Witchfinder,
Mm-hmm.
and that was going to be wrapping up real soon, and I didn't have another job lined up. So I just called up my editor, Daniel Shiban, and was like, I was like, what do you want me to do next? And he was like, you tell me. So, so I called up Cullen Bunn, who I had worked with on Sixth Gun.
Right.
And I really liked working with him, and just was like, do you want to pitch an original thing together? And he was down. So we sort of bounced around a couple ideas about what we could do. And Harrow County was one of Cullen's things. He had started it as a novel a couple years earlier. He sort of just had that like on the back burner. And as soon as he started telling me about the story and about how much of it would take place out in the woods, I was sort of like, let's do that one. Because I had just moved from Southern California to Oregon and was just losing my mind over all the woods out here. Because, you know, Southern California, there's really no forests per se.
No, you got the coastline and then you got the desert pretty much in Southern California. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get a lot of like maybe chest high chaparral, and that's what you got in SoCal.
Yeah.
So I was just super pumped about forests and woods, and was really looking forward to drawing a lot of that. And so that's sort of how we chose Harrow County, and we pitched it, and it got approved, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Gabriel? How did you end up working with Gerard on Umbrella Academy?
When Gerard first approached Scott Alley with Umbrella, they were looking for an artist, and so I think Scott has, put together a box of choices, and I had done a few at that point. At Dark Horse, I had that short story on autobiographics, and I was doing, which is, my type of story, day by day, regular. Well, it's an autobiographical story on autobiographic.
Right.
So, and I had this, I was doing a Casanova with Matt Fraction.
Right.
And then I also did a self-published comic called Rock and Roll that after we did the self-published version, Image picked it up and republished it.
Right.
So he saw all these 3 comics that showed him I could draw regular people, crazy stuff, action, and everything that he thought Umbrella would need. So they wrote me and said, so we have this project, and I really liked the idea of the series, because even though it's a superhero book, it really is about their relations and their problems. And that's the kind of story that I am drawn into. And I also like to point that out, that Umbrella Academy was my first paying job in the comics industry after like 10 years working in comics.
Wow.
Well, that autobiographic story was a paying job as well. We got like $90 a page for script, art, and everything.
Sure.
But it was a great exposure. We were in a book with Will Eisner and Frank Miller and Stan Sakai and a lot of great creators. So that was, payment enough. But on Umbrella Academy, it was my first like page rate, good money kind of work.
Right.
So and I was going to work with Gerard. So I knew from the start that it would draw a lot of attention and there would be a lot of pressure on me. So it was my big break, or biggest project so far.
Right.
So all these elements add up to the challenge of, okay, so I'm going to try this. I think this is going to work. And, I think I stopped taking freelance work after that, just to, make room to have all the time to make that work. Because up to that point, I was doing a lot of freelance work as well.
Right.
And that's how it started. Actually, from the invitation to actually start drawing like Apocalypse Suite, it took something like 8 to 10 months.
Wow.
But we did that short story for Free Comic Book Day, right. And we started, getting the feel for all the characters and everything. But we got along from the very beginning. I loved the script, and we worked really well together. And it just, I think it just worked. So I have lots of fun doing Umbrella. It calls from those superhero comics that I read when I was young.
Right.
I can just pour it in all the pages. So I have the Daredevil sequences. I have the Batman sequences. I have, the fights. I have this, big scenes with lots of buildings being destroyed. And so I can put everything that I've ever read into Umbrella. And we have this great drama relationships with all these characters in a crazy way that I don't really know how to write. So it's great to be working on this book.
Right. Very cool. How does it feel to see it adapted from comics onto the Netflix adaptation? What has that process been like for you?
Well, in the beginning, you're always scared because it doesn't exist and you want it to be faithful, or you get it right. And you're afraid they're going to just, blow it. Don't respect your vision or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that's before it exists. And we're just lucky, the people who are in charge of the TV series are just very good on what they're doing. They know how to do television series. Steve, our showmaker, has a great understanding of the story, and he knew what to change to make it work for a different audience. So make it more grounded, develop the characters a lot more and their relationships. And it just works, everything they changed to the TV series works in favor of the story they're telling and the media they're telling it on. So it just works. And that's the most important part, not being completely faithful to the comic, but understanding the media and how to tell the story the best way you can on that media.
Right. So
I'm, pretty happy, and we're just so lucky because there's so many bad shows out there. And so, and it's great because, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people have read Umbrella Academy all over the world, but millions of people have seen the show. So I don't know. That's it makes my life easier to tell people what I do Like,
Sure.
oh, I do comics and I do this comic book called Umbrella Academy. Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, I didn't know what was a comic. I saw this answer on Mignola's interview, on a Mignola interview for the Society of Illustrators,
Mm-hmm.
that, it's very easy for him to say he created Hellboy because everyone knows Hellboy, even
Right.
though they don't know it was a comic book.
Yeah.
And so, the TV series did that. All my friends who haven't read Umbrella Academy have seen the show. So
Right.
it makes my life a little easier.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, switching gears a little bit, let's talk about all of your process when you come to sit down at your drafting boards like you are right now. Why don't you walk us through what the process is to sit down, plan out, and then start drawing? Whoever wants to start may start. Mike, yeah, you wanna walk us through your process?
Yeah, I read the script all at once so I can feel the story and fell in love with her, and also I can see where it goes, and then I give it a second reading, and while I do that, I do thumbnails in the margins of the pages just to place how many panels, because sometimes the writer put a number of panels, but maybe I need more or less, and to determine which panel I should give more importance or something like that. And after that, I do small layouts I do it actually digitally, but to exemplify, it's half of A3 page of, and then I do layouts, and just for me, because for me to see where it goes. And when I do the finish, I completely change what I did in the layouts, because
Right.
sometimes I see I'm drawing, hey, this is good, this is going to be good. So because it's digital, I can replace the whole thing. And it's kind of like when I was drawing, when I was starting my career, I didn't know how artists do it. So I used to draw it every scene separately and then paste all over in the page, because I didn't know how they do it too.
Right.
And also because I used a lot of zip tones back then. I'm using them now again, and it was very expensive. So instead of using the real one that they you can paste them because they come with glue in them, I would take copies of that on paper, and then I would make the drawing. I open it with a knife and paste on the back of the page. In the end, the page was very thick. So nowadays I do all the same, but digitally.
Gotcha.
Draw the scenes, and then I kind of place them around. Hey, this will work better here. I blew it, make it bigger. So it's a lot of fun. And because now I have a better understanding of narrative and storytelling, and so I don't worry about this anymore. I can play with the layout of the page, the design of the page, without being afraid of hurting the storytelling. So it comes naturally. I don't have to worry about this, and then I can play with the layout of the page, depending on the book, on the theme of the book, or the kind of book I'm doing. I can choose to do a very classic layouts, or I can go crazy. So depending on the project. So Yeah, basically that's it. Oh, and also before I start inking, I go after every reference I can get. So I go after photos from the artists I wanna make an homage of them, of actors, and I go after reference for guns or cars or everything. When I gather everything, then I start. And that's
very cool. What kind of
photo?
Oh, sorry, Tyler.
Do you do a lot of photo reference of your, like, for poses and things like that?
Oh, yeah. That I do a lot. My wife hates it because she's the photographer. But she can go nowhere. We are in quarantine. And so it's a lot of fun. I just take a light like this, and I use it to make the shadows and the lights and everything. And I take a lot of pictures of myself. Even for women reference, I use myself.
Yeah.
But because when I use my wife, I have to actually make I have to make like she's a doll, because she doesn't get the pose right. So I have to take her hand and do this. And
Right.
So I'm doing myself. So I take the and that's it. It's a lot of fun. I'm using also a lot of 3D reference too. I get a lot from Google SketchUp. They have a Google SketchUp warehouse. You can find everything there in all the angles you want. So life is good nowadays. Back then, I have every time I would go to a dentist or a doctor, I would rip all the pages of the books there. Oh, it's a good reference, and put and take it home. And I had these big files with a lot of old photos and everything. So now we have Google. So
yeah.
I was at the tail end of that reference thing. When I first started working on video games, the studio I worked at actually only had one computer that was on the internet. So like if you wanted reference, we actually had a huge library of like books and magazines to go dig through to find reference.
Wow.
But then just like within a year or two of me starting video games, that was totally changed.
Right. Naomi, what's your process when you sit down to start drawing?
Like Mike, I like to, make sure I've read the entire script in one go to get the, the emotional beats and the feeling of the characters and everything. And then I'll go back and reread it and do thumbnails with it. But I do a lot of research, a lot of mood boards, basically, kind of like inspirational like sheets, just to have my references immediately all in once. But because most of what I do is digital these days, it's a lot of really like quick gestural drawings of not even like the pages that I'm drawing, but like the characters that I'm illustrating for the story, just so I can make it kind of muscle memory of, what these characters look like, what these characters move like or act like, so that when I have to actually do the layouts and then do the pages, I don't have to think about that as much when I'm working, and I can kind of not autopilot, but kind of the workflow is smoother that way, because I'm not stopping to think about, character body language and stuff.
Right.
Like what I did for Harrow County, I had all the character sheets pinned up in front of me, like constantly to look at. And most of my thumbnails and things were digital as well, because it's a lot easier to make your changes and your adjustments digitally than like having to erase and redo the thumbnails. And I want to get that done fast so I can get to the harder part of drawing the whole pages. But I actually use my thumbnails to work out a lot of my perspective in pages, especially with digital. Because if I can put the perspective grids down and work that out in the thumbnails, and it's easier for me to translate when I get to the final, and I don't have to draw like all the perspective grids on the actual page.
Right.
Yeah. But
very cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tyler, how about you? What's your process like sitting down to draw?
Remarkably similar.
Who has the weird rituals? Somebody's got to have a weird ritual.
I guess the place where mine really differs, like I do my layouts digitally, and nowadays I'm penciling digital. So where I separate from a lot of it is that I end up I print my pencils out, and I print them out as sort of like a brown line. Mm-hmm. And then that's what I ink and paint over.
Gotcha. Do you print on like what's typically considered watercolor paper?
I use a Strathmore 400 series mixed media paper. And okay. It's like a Bristol board. It's not textured like a watercolor paper, but it has the glue that they use. They call it sizing. The sizing that they use on the paper is instead of just being applied to the surface of the paper like it is usually. My understanding is that this stuff it's like mixed in as they're making the pulp or whatever. So it takes wet media very, very well. It sort of like curves a little bit, but it flattens out on its own as it dries. And I love that stuff, man. If they change the formula on that, like I'm gonna have problems.
Gotcha. We're actually just about done. So if everybody wants to show off what they got right now, let everybody see.
So, since I'm already done, I can, hold my phone and put it closer. And
I have to say it's beautiful. I think you knocked it out of the park personally.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
Bernice and Priscilla look so good.
Yeah, that looks so cool. Mike, same to you. Oh my God, that Colonel Weird is just so insanely detailed.
Yeah, that's gorgeous.
I finished it 1 hour ago, so I have
to.
That's a pro right there.
Right there. Yeah. Yeah. Tyler, same to you. Naomi, same to you. Just gorgeous, gorgeous pieces. Seeing Space Boy painted in watercolor, seeing the Berserker done like that, that's really good. Well, thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to join us for this panel, and thank you all watching for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us as we just kind of hang out and chat and draw some characters and some cool comic books. If everybody, before we sign off, wants to give off where people can find you on the internet or where they can follow your work. Naomi, we can start with you.
Hi. Okay. Once again, I'm Naomi Franquiz, and you can find me online on Twitter, Tumblr, on my website, Instagram, at Naomi Frank with a Q, FRINQ. Pretty much the same name on everything. So,
Mike, how about you? Where can we find you?
I'm in Instagram, Mike Deodato, and Twitter and Facebook. Everywhere, and I talk to everybody, so don't be afraid. I don't bite. I'm ugly, but I don't bite.
Jesus.
Gabriel, how about you? Where can we find you?
I'm everywhere as well, but I don't really open or try not to use social media anymore. I'm too tired of that. I did that for so long. I don't know. Look for Gabriel Bá. You're gonna find me, or don't look for it. Look for my books. Look for, Umbrella Academy, Details, Day Tripper, Two Brothers.
I have a series.
Yeah.
I don't care anymore.
Don't waste your time with social media. Go read a book. That's where you're gonna find me. Yeah.
Good advice. That's actually really good advice. Tyler, what about you? Where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and on Twitter, I'm Mr. Tyler Crook, and it's Mr. Tyler Crook. And on Instagram, I'm Mr. Tyler Crook with Mr. spelled out, Mister.
Very cool. Well, thank you all once again for taking the time out. Phenomenal jobs, everybody. You guys killed it. I hope everybody had a great time hanging out and just chatting while we're all just kind of doing the stay-at-home social distancing thing. So from everybody at Dark Horse, thanks for watching. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Ciao.